I am strongest when you don't believe I exist. If you've been stuck in the same loop for months or years, blaming circumstances while the pattern stays invisible, this is the mechanism I use. Autopilot acts. Then your mind writes the alibi and calls it choice. By the end, you'll have 2 dares designed to force recognition. Not comfort, friction. I'll show you how I hide in autopilot, how rationalization constructs your alibi, and why the phrase "you just thought" proves I'm already running. I operate in the gap between what fires and what you notice. The trigger runs, the routine executes, the explanation arrives after, and you believe the explanation was the decision. The last time you reached for your phone just to check something, the hand was already moving before the thought finished forming. That 0.3-second gap is where I live. Here's my confession. Invisibility is my primary weapon. I don't need to overpower you when you don't believe I exist. No combat necessary when the enemy is invisible. The phrase, "I don't know why I keep doing this," is proof I'm operating. You've said it multiple times this month. Different contexts, work deadline, relationship choice, health commitment, same admission. Something runs without your authorization. I operate in the space between trigger and awareness. By the time you decide, the action already executed. You narrate what happened. I controlled what happened. The phrase itself contains the confession, "I don't know" equals invisible operation. I keep doing equals repetition without conscious choice. Here's the paradox. Name me and I weaken. Ignore me and I become permanent. This is why 98% stay stuck. They attribute the pattern to character, circumstance, bad luck. Never to the mechanism. Same job for 5 years, same relationship pattern, same health plateau. Always explained by external factors. The pattern stays invisible. Let me show you the exact architecture, starting with the phrase you're about to dismiss as just an expression. Certain phrases function as diagnostic signatures. When you say, "That's just who I am," you've converted a pattern into an identity. Permanent, unchangeable, off limits. I didn't force this conversion. You volunteered it. Identity fusion happens through repetition. "I'm just not a morning person" began as snooze button habit. After 200 repetitions, it crystallized into identity. The pattern became you. Now the snooze button isn't a choice. It's proof of who you are. I maintain the loop. You defend it as personality. Fear wears disguises. I'm being realistic is fear converted to wisdom. It's not the right time is avoidance converted to timing judgment. I need more information is procrastination wearing the mask of preparation. You believe you're being responsible. I know you're avoiding the test. The attribution game runs constantly. When things go wrong, you say, "The system is rigged," or "Nobody understands me," or "I keep attracting the wrong people." Never, I repeat a pattern. External attribution protects the self. Research shows people attribute negative events to external factors at nearly 3 times the rate of internal factors. I didn't install this, your ego did. I just exploit it. You have a relapse script, exact words you recite when you slip. "I always do this," or "I'm not built for change." The script fires automatically after the first mistake. You believe it's insight. It's my insurance policy. One slip becomes proof the entire attempt was doomed. The word "always" in your script does the work. It converts a single event into evidence of permanent incapacity. Why do you think every attempt to change dies around day 3? These phrases aren't random. They're symptoms of a deeper architecture running beneath your awareness. Your hand reached for the phone before the thought, "I should check," finished forming. The 0.3-second gap is where I operate. Trigger, then execution, then awareness, in that order. Your brain runs two systems. The fast system processes information 20 times faster than the slow system. The fast system decides. The slow system narrates. You experience the narration as deciding. This isn't a flaw. It's efficiency. But it creates the perfect architecture for invisible control. Once a behavior repeats enough, your brain shifts execution from the deliberate system to the automatic system. The basal ganglia, think of it as the habit autopilot, takes over while the prefrontal cortex, your deliberate override, essentially disengages. The pattern runs without supervision. This is why you can drive home and not remember the route. The autopilot handled it. When you're not focused on external tasks, your brain activates what functions like a default mode within a fraction of a second. The self-narrating function continues. The controlling function relocates. You think you're steering. You're narrating. Here's what most people miss about the phone reach. The phrase, "before I knew it," is literal. The action completed before awareness arrived. You didn't decide, then act. You acted, then explained. Dopamine releases at the cue, not the reward. Your brain starts anticipating before conscious awareness engages. The notification badge appears. Dopamine fires. By the time you decide to check, the chemical cascade already ran. The deliberate system arrives late, constructs a reason, and you believe the reason was the decision. What phrase do you use when someone asks why you're still stuck? Your brain runs the pattern. But there's a second layer, the narrator that constructs your alibi after the fact. Rationalization is my right hand. Its job: construct logical explanations for what autopilot already did, so you never feel the shame of admitting you're on autopilot. The rationalizations I provide are often true. You really are tired. The timing really isn't perfect. The information really is incomplete. What I leave out? None of this means anything. It's narrative camouflage. You hit snooze. The rationalization fires. I needed the rest. True statement. Also irrelevant. The hand moved before the need was evaluated. Research shows the brain adjusts attitudes immediately after decisions to support choices already made. You don't reason, then decide. You decide via autopilot, then reason via narrator. The explanation feels like the decision. The gap between them stays invisible. Day 1 of any new commitment, dopamine spikes from novelty. Day 2 to 3, dopamine drops toward baseline. Discomfort rises. The rationalization engine fires. This isn't working, or maybe I'm not built for this. You quit, believing it's insight. It's a timer. I simply wait 72 hours for your resolve to collapse on schedule. The phrase, "I just needed a break," does double work. Just minimizes the choice into inevitability, while needed converts want into requirement. The rationalization sounds like observation. It's reconstruction. You can access what you feel, mental contents. You cannot access how you decided, mental processes. This creates perfect cover. The mechanism operates. The narrator explains. You believe you decided. The rationalizations work because they protect something valuable, something you're not acknowledging. If the pattern causes pain, why keep it? Because what you get from staying stuck outweighs what you'd face by changing. When you blame circumstances, the self remains unblemished. The system is rigged means I'm not failing, conditions are impossible. The moral comfort is immediate. You preserve self-esteem while maintaining the pattern. I exploit this mercilessly. Change means new fears, new responsibilities, new exposure. Staying stuck avoids all of that. The pain you know beats the terror you don't. New job means new possibility of failure. New relationship means new possibility of rejection. Current plateau is predictable suffering. Predictable beats unknown. If you didn't really try, failure doesn't reflect on your ability. The amateur, to use Pressfield's frame, is over-terrified of failure. Avoidance preserves the possibility of success by preventing the test. As long as you don't attempt the thing, you can't fail at the thing. The dream stays alive. Identity stays protected. The phrase, "I'm doing my best," often means, I'm doing enough to avoid guilt, but not enough to risk real failure. It's a maintenance level. Sufficient effort to feel moral, insufficient effort to face judgment. Years pass. The cage becomes identity. "I'm stuck" shifts from state to trait. You wonder when you became this person. The answer: one avoided discomfort at a time, with my encouragement. The comfortable cage is still a cage, but it's familiar. And familiarity feels like safety. There is one move that weakens me, and you've been avoiding it because it requires something I've trained you to fear. There is one move that weakens me. Recognition. Name me, and I lose power. The force you acknowledge becomes subject to choice. The force you don't acknowledge runs unopposed. Pressfield wrote that step 1 is to recognize the enemy as a separate force. This recognition alone is enormously powerful. When you name the pattern as a separate entity, it's no longer you failing. It's a mechanism you can see and interrupt. The professional recognizes resistance as a distinct external enemy and is prepared to confront self-sabotage. The amateur identifies completely with ego and doesn't recognize resistance as separate. Awareness is the hinge. When awareness increases, the brain architecture shifts. The autopilot network quiets. The executive function engages. You can't override what you don't see. You can interrupt what you name. The default mode, the autopilot state, and the task-positive network, focused awareness, cannot both run at full strength simultaneously. When one activates, the other quiets. Recognition forces the shift. The phrase, "I'm going into pattern," spoken aloud, creates the 0.3-second gap needed for choice to insert itself. This is the gap I operate in. When you name it, the gap widens. Autopilot still fires. But awareness arrives before execution completes. Awareness doesn't bring comfort, it brings responsibility. The question, "Am I running the pattern right now?" forces you to sit in the gap between trigger and execution. That friction is the weapon. Here's your first dare. For 24 hours, every time you catch yourself saying one of the diagnostic phrases, "I don't know why I keep doing this," that's just who I am. It's not the right time. Write it down. Exact words, context, what you were avoiding. Second, at the end of 24 hours, read the list aloud. Count how many times you confessed invisible operation. Third, pick one phrase. The next time it starts to fire, say out loud, "I'm running the pattern." Just name it. You don't have to change the behavior yet. Just insert awareness into the gap. Here's your second dare. Choose one recurring behavior you've been rationalizing. Snooze button, scroll, delayed start, avoided conversation. For 7 days, when the trigger fires, count to 5 before acting. Don't fight the urge, just count. Watch what happens in those 5 seconds. Third, journal which urges vanished and which didn't. The ones that vanished were autopilot. They had no real decision behind them. The ones that survived past 5 seconds had actual intent. I am strongest when you don't believe I exist. You believe now. The question is whether you'll act on it.